Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Lessons from Production, where we dive into stories and insights from founders who've been there, done that, and shaping the future. Today, we're excited to have Sanskar on the show, who is at the forefront of building the personal AI company, and they recently launched Amurex. So, we'll be exploring the challenges and opportunities of building an AI company in 2025 and what it means for the future of AI assistance and our daily lives. Sanskar, welcome on the show. Would you like to give our audience a quick intro and what you've been doing to keep yourself busy these days?
Yes, sure. First of all, thank you for having me, Kunal. My name is Sanskar, born and raised in New Delhi. I've been there for 20 years, then moved to London to work at Bloomberg and maintained another fast Python web framework called Robin, scaled it to 3 million installs until I had an idea of Amurex, and which is when I left my job and moved to the Bay Area to work at the personal AI company and Amurex. So Amurex is an invisible AI companion that integrates into your existing workflows. We've been spending the past 6 months trying to build it.
So Sanskar is a very good friend of mine. We met in Delhi. I was doing my university from there as well, and we connected via open source. As he mentioned, he has his own open source projects like Robin, and recently launched Amurex. I think Robin has millions of downloads, which is pretty cool. And then he moved to London. Then I moved to London, and we hung out over there as well. And I believe now, Sanskar, you're in San Francisco. How is that going? How's the shift been from working at a really big company like Bloomberg to doing your own startup and moving to San Francisco?
It's one of the most intense places I've ever been, but the level of ambition and the technical aptitude that I've seen here is just uncomparable to any place I've ever been. So super intense, but I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Yeah, it's the valley. And what are some of the biggest culture shocks or like startup shocks that you have seen when comparing San Francisco with the rest of the world? Let's say India and um, London.
I honestly haven't worked much in India, so I can only compare it to London. But the biggest difference is you'll still easily find someone working at 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning without you having to force them to do it. And it's also considered quite normal. Whereas people do expect some sort of work life balance in London. Here, it's just, I think, blasphemy, even if you expect something like a balance. People are expected to just go all in, and it's just normal. You're not just rewarded for just outworking someone.
That's interesting. So, what's your take on work-life balance? I think you are a very small team right now, but as you grow, what sort of a culture do you want to be moving towards across the organization?
I think balance is good to an extent, but I think it's super hard to achieve in the early days. I think in the early days, unless you are ultimate like super obsessed with what you're building until it's the only thing that you're thinking about 24/7, it's super hard to do a consumer app well. Maybe it is possible, but we haven't seen that. Even in early days of Robin, even in early days of any other product, that was the only thing on my mind throughout the day. So I would love to I would love to give work-life balance, but I think it would be, yeah, incredibly hard. It's just not possible in the early days.
Now, I couldn't agree more. I think for a startup, it's not just like when people talk about work-life balance, and I know people like working and coding late night and drinking Monster and whatnot. It's what people have to realize that people choose to do that. They love doing that. They want to build. They want to get cross that chasm, and it's that startup thrill that most people seek, and why people move to the places like San Francisco. One other reason I see people move to San Francisco is I've heard it's like easier to get funding in SF as compared to anywhere else in the world. What's your take on that?
I would say yes, it's slightly easier because you're not treated with cynicism. People are just more open and more ambitious towards your ideas. We still haven't raised, so I'll tell you after we complete the round. But I would still say yes. it's easier because people are just generally more optimistic towards your ambition and ideas.
And would you say they have a lot more risk appetite as compared to founders or VC investors you have met in Europe, for example?
I would say yes, 100%. The things move just faster here. It's not yes, the risk appetite, but also how fast the rounds are closed. It's just unparalleled. You can just quickly close your round, go back to working on your company because fundraise is usually a distraction. You need capital to build a product. Uh, Fundraise is not your goal, and as fast as you can close it is as fast you can come back and building the best ever product you want to.
All right. So what led to that? Like you had a nice job in Bloomberg, living in London. I love London. Um, and I'm here right now. I'm here for at least a few more years. So what changed? Like I want to quit my stable job and I want to do my own thing with a lot of, I mean, getting into the startup space and getting into the AI space right now because there's like so much competition. Any use case that I think there's a company doing that, you know,
Yeah,
AI. I don't know. You get my point,
I,
right? AI assistants, AI assistants, like there are so many out there, for example. So what led to like you just quitting your job one day and starting this company? And for those of you who are listening, you're not alone on this journey. You have a co-founder who's a CTO. How did you meet him? And what advice do you have for people who have a stable, nice job and they just want to get out there and take their chance and just do good things?
okay, that's a very chunky question. Firstly, I had been thinking about Amurex for like 9 months or so. I tried different ideas. I tried a hardware version. I tried a desktop application, and it wasn't like I left my job and then decided I want to work on it. This idea had been budding on the back of my mind. I considered multiple directions, and only then when I really thought to myself that if I don't commit full time to it, it would be a disservice to the world, which is when I left my job. And I joined a program called Entrepreneurs First, and that program basically brings together a lot of smart people and hopes that you will find a co-founder there. So their philosophy is basically like entrepreneur dating. They bring in smart people in the room together, and then they give you a space to work together. They provide you a stipend, and if you do well, they fund your pre-seed round, and then you go on and build a big company. And as to how I just met Arson, who's my co-founder, is through Entrepreneurs First, and what we prioritized was the level of intensity that we have. It should be shared, and also the thing that I prioritize the most is if I can be with the same person in a room for like 16 hours a day at least. Because when you're working on this journey together, you expect to be with your co-founder for the next 10 years, at least 5 years. And if you cannot spend like 12 to 16 hours in the same room with them, it will be a massive problem. So the first priority for me was, can I be a very close friend with that person? Then how good are they at your job? Arson is incredibly intelligent, and the level of intensity should be shared. These were the three things. And the final ask was, what would I tell someone? Yes, that it will be the beauty about entrepreneurship is people know it will be hard, but the moment you start it, you find out it's way harder than even whatever you have imagined. So don't start a company until it's the only thing that you want to do for the next few years in your life, and it's something that you cannot not do. So it will be incredibly hard, but it will be super rewarding because there's nothing else I would be doing right now.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. You shared a lot of points that I have follow-up questions on. The first one being the accelerator in London. You
Yes.
mentioned like smart people get into it. How do they make that criteria? Like I assume for you it would be the amazing open source journey you've had, like for the application process, what is it that shined for them to let you in?
For that, I'd have to ask Alice or ask the selectors. But I think your previous work obviously helps a lot. How they prioritize or how they select your application is your previous track record. The philosophy is if you have done incredible things in the past, there's a high chance you'll do incredible things in the future. And it doesn't matter. For me, it was Robin and Bloomberg, probably, and also going to a good university. But depends from person to person. There were a few people who were already exited from the previous company. They had acquisitions. There were a few people in our cohort who were already selected by Forbes 30 under 30. So the criteria is different for everyone. Just what's the most incredible thing you've done in the past and how you can trace it forward to the future.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Everyone has a different journey, and yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned about the startup journey. It's much more harder than you can imagine. Can you put some uh, metrics or KPIs to that? Like what is hard? Is it the running a business? Is it the uh, time between you raise funding? Is it the prototyping? Is it coming up with ideas? Like when you mention hard, what all challenges do you think you've faced, and how you're working on solving those?
For me, prototyping, I would say, wouldn't be the hardest part. Probably not also the funding. The hardest challenge is dealing with the uncertainty that you are working on something without knowing if this would work out. You still believe in the idea, and you strongly believe in the idea, especially for Arsen and I. And then you're obviously greeted by some sort of skepticism. Maybe it's with regards to competition, maybe it's regard to your approach. And then you have to basically create this vision field around yourself, telling that, yes, I truly believe in this idea. Everyone else who does not agree with it doesn't know what they're talking about, or it will make sense to them eventually. So just you have to be sort of delusional and somewhat arrogant in your belief that, yes, I'm the only person who's correct in this world and everyone who disagrees with me is wrong. That is the most challenging part, for me at least. Just being true to your mission and convincing yourself, yes, it's the correct direction.
Cool, and thanks for sharing that. And you mentioned you were working on some hardware devices and stuff. And edge AI is becoming increasingly important in for real-time processing. What would you say are some of the trade-offs between running AI models on the edge devices versus like in the cloud or on the own, people's local machines? And how do you decide which approach is the best for which specific use case?
So for edge devices, you are greeted with some limitation. You cannot, at least, and when I was making hardware, you couldn't run large models on that. But usually the inference was fast because you were forced to select small models. But running on the cloud provides some sort of like insecurity because you don't know what data you're sharing, A, and also it adds some latency, but they are smarter. Like you can run larger models there. It has larger context windows, and for us right now, we are just choosing smartness. We want to be able to provide the best responses, even though if that means like a latency of zero point 0.1 second more, or some privacy trade-offs. But we are open source in that regard, so you can audit the code. But we are prioritizing smartness, which is why we are going towards the cloud models compared to like edge models where you have a smaller context window.
Cool, cool. And we haven't spoken much about Amurex right now. It's an open source project. Would you like to tell the audience what you've been working on and the why behind your company? I love asking founders this question, like, what's your why? What's your mission?
Yes.
So let's go with that.
So what we are trying to do with Amurex, firstly, I'll do an introduction. Amurex is an invisible AI companion that integrates in your existing workflows. That's a simple one liner. And why we are building it is because we believe this will be the eventual goal towards becoming your personal ultimate assistant, at least on the software level. And I realized when I was working at Bloomberg is that I was spending a lot of time working on mundane tasks in knowledge work, capturing knowledge, taking notes, organizing my knowledge, uh, deciding how to manage my emails, whereas my concrete work wasn't getting enough attention. The reason why we started Amurex was to eliminate the mundane tasks in your life. And how we are doing it right now is starting by eliminating fragmentation. What I mean by that is in in the current world, you have every productivity app that's fighting for your attention. You have like 10 messages on Slack, you have knowledge in your Google Drive, you have some knowledge in your Google Docs, you have knowledge in Notion, you have multiple email inboxes, and you don't know where to find the exact information or what to do with that meaning. And once you have found the meaning, found the information, you don't know how to take action on that. So we are creating this AI assistant that integrates into your existing workflows and can help you make sense out of it and then hopefully take actions and organize your day in that regard so that you can focus on the things that truly matter, not in fooling yourselves into by spending time on mundane tasks and making yourself feel more productive instead of being more productive.
That's what a lot of people are after. That dopamine that you get from, I read somewhere, you get a lot of dopamine from planning what to do rather than, and then when you actually want to do it, that's
Yes.
where the procrastination hits. But you are building in the space with some of the very big names like there's Notion, OpenAI, Google, and a lot of people are starting to adopt AI. Traditional companies, they are adopting the AI landscape by leveraging technologies like automated machine learning, which automates the process of building and deploying ML models. And a lot of people are also investing in AI research. We did a survey in our company where we realized that a lot of AI projects don't even make it to production because A, people don't have dedicated teams, and B, they don't have enough money to put into AI research. So how do you see the competition playing out in your space? Like, what strategies are you using to stay ahead both of AI native and the traditional competitors? And what is your edge? I mean, who do you think your real competitor is?
So, that's a saucy question first. But Notion is or OpenAI, those are not our competitors. We are a consumer layer company, and we want to integrate over these existing productivity applications. The reason why I think what we are doing is a category defining tool, so we don't have any real competitors at this point. Uh, what we want to do is we don't want to change user perception or we don't want to change user behavior. You should be using any tool that you enjoy. If you like using Google Docs, you should use that. If you enjoy using Notion, you should use that. We will come in and become a layer over the top. So imagine us to be like a meta browser or a meta OS that will be a layer above your browser or a layer above your OS. So we nothing like this has been done before. And in addition to that, we are open source. So no real competition right now, just a uh, very new product that we are trying to build. And as to how we are deciding, Arson is actually very good at machine learning. So I think him alone is the R&D department for now. After that, we'll definitely hire people. But Arson has a great experience in machine learning. I have a great experience in web. So we can build together and we can ship really fast.
Cool, cool. And I believe he's the CTO and you're the CEO. How have you seen, like, I know you as a really techie guy,
Mhm.
and when you're running a company, there are just so many things that take up a lot of hours in your time that is not coding. How has that happened, and how have you seen your shift towards the business side of things rather than purely technical?
Actually, that was a very surprising thing that happened to us. Initially, we just started as two engineers, two cracked engineers working on a product. Now, I've been spending the last couple of weeks away from programming. I still program here and there, but mostly it's understanding the market, understanding the user behavior, trying to see what the go-to-market strategies are, or what should be the pricing, when should you introduce pricing. So all these other commercial details that you wouldn't think otherwise as just an engineer. So sorry, I would say in the past 2 weeks, 70% of my work has been not programming, which is something I wasn't expecting, but this is a part of what we need to succeed, and also an exciting challenge because it's something I haven't necessarily been involved with a lot before.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the reason I asked that question is because that was a big shock for me as well. I see myself doing a lot of go-to-market. For those who don't know, I work at Civo, now the field CTO. We're a cloud company launching in India. So I just found myself coding a lot less and doing just more businessy side of things. And like you mentioned, studying the market and how to sell and all those things. So it's been an interesting journey. Cool. So we're talking about AI assistants, and they are becoming increasingly prevalent in our daily lives. And as AI gets integrated into our workflows, like you mentioned, Google Meet, Google Docs, what's like the most significant challenge in designing AI systems that are both powerful and unobtrusive? So how do you think this challenge can be addressed? How do you make sure that AI is not the one taking control over you, and you are actually like the one in charge?
So I think the hardest part is like making any other consumer application is hiding the intelligence behind simplicity. Most powerful systems or many applications that you see right now, they just become like feature creep, feature jungles. They have everything just fighting for your attention, uh, basically trying to get control of your attention span or of you basically. So how we structure our design philosophy is like a great butler. It should be quiet. It should be present with you all the time, but it shouldn't be interfering in your workflows. It should be useful without suggesting you a lot, but also without you having to ask many questions. So we prioritize at least is invisible UI and a zero config requirements. You should have the freedom to config whatever you want, but you shouldn't be forced to choose everything by default. We come in with some opinions, but we give you the freedom, and it should be invisible and omnipresent. So we believe that the maximum output will come in through the minimum effort on your end. So just the hardest challenge will be how we can maintain the most intelligent system with the simplest UI and hide the intelligence behind this invisible layer. So just going invisible, having more features, but having tastefully integrated in your existing workflows is how we tackle it.
That is true, and I realized that when I was a little kid because I had a Samsung phone and then I had another one, and back then I don't know how Samsung does this now because of that I never used Samsung again in my life ever. So what they did was they forced you so much in the ecosystem. Like you have a gallery app for Samsung, and then you have a photos gallery app. You have an email from Samsung, then you have a Gmail app. You have a Samsung calendar app, then you have a Google calendar app. That is fine, but now they won't let me uninstall their application. Like it
Exactly.
was just sitting back there, like they were forcing me to use that, and I don't like that. So I've never used Samsung since then. Big Samsung hater. But what about Robin? Like, oh sorry, cut. But yeah, but what about hmm, but yeah, what about Amurex? Like, it's a Chrome extension. Why didn't you just? Is that the same reason why you didn't build an application that people just download, or like a Play Store app or something, or an IDE sort of a thing?
Exactly. The philosophy of going Chrome extension first was we don't want you to download a new application. You should be comfortable using your own meetings. You should be comfortable using whatever workflow you use. We'll be a layer over that. So that's why we call ourselves sometimes the meta browser, which is a layer that's over a browser, and we can help you without us forcing you to migrate to a new application. Every other productivity tool that has come in, like an all-in-one solution, has forced you. We'll solve everything in your life if you stop using whatever you're using and come in and migrate to our software, which makes no sense, at least to me. So we want you to use whatever you use, and we'll help you with the existing workflows.
So from your market research, which is the most popular browser that you are seeing your users use? By the way, congrats on the product hunt launch. They actually beat Llama 4 and Microsoft Copilot, which was pretty cool. But since the podcast is called Lessons from Production, what are some of your production stories, and maybe something you learned during your launch or when you push this product out in the market? Um, what's the most surprising lesson that you learned?
So we've launched multiple times. The first launch when we did, we were only supporting Google Meet. And because I primarily use Google Meet, Arsen primarily uses Google Meet, we thought that that would be the majority of the market share. Turns out the 40% of the market uses MS Teams, which we never thought was possible, just because probably the kind of friends we have or the ecosystem we were in. Turns out a lot of engineers are forced to use Microsoft Teams just because their companies have a subscription with Outlook and have access to the Microsoft suite, which is one thing that was really surprising for us. And the second thing is how everyone immediately resonated with us being invisible and omnipresent. We were slightly afraid that being invisible and omnipresent might sound like a jargon or buzzwords, but it was super surprising on how the target ICP, which is the customer profile, recognized and understood the philosophy behind the product.
So who is your ideal ICP?
High agency knowledge workers, anyone who has a lot of motivation and who wants to get a lot of things done in their lives and is technically doing a white collar job, like dealing with a lot of knowledge or dealing with a lot of data, arranging the Notion, Google Drive, use multiple applications or has to use multiple applications. We solve their fragmentation and we make their lives easier.
Yeah, before this interaction, I had no idea Microsoft Teams had 40% share, which is a surprise to me. Yeah, I mean it's kind of the it's kind of like you one just assumes because that's how we have grown up, not just with Google Meet but in other aspects of life. So a nice little good lesson over there. But since we're talking about assistants, and we're talking about individuals, I think personalization is key to making the AI assistants effective. So to be truly useful, they need to understand the individual user's needs and their preferences.
Mhm.
What are some of the most effective ways to achieve personalization in AI systems? And do you think there are any trade-offs between personalization and data privacy?
Oh, yes. Firstly, I think personalization is power. The more personalized system that you can get is the more powerful you become. And the trade-offs are obviously you need to decide if it's a retrieval problem where you can just get away by using a RAG, or if it's a fine-tuning problem. But ultimately, I have noticed it's usually a both problem. And then you need to decide if you're using retrieval, how do you make a long-term memory system out of that, and how does it evolve? And we go to another step where we are eyeing something called hyper-personalization, which means that the more you use a system, the more personalized it should be becoming to you. So at some point, Amurex for Kunal should be substantially different for Amurex for Sanskar, just because it's so personalized to you. And yes, it is a big trade-off between privacy and personalization. But how we try to earn is we try to earn your trust. Being open source helps us a lot in that regard. Is we are not doing any dirty deeds with your data. You know where we are storing it exactly. You can audit the code. We are getting certifications. So Yes, there is a trade off, but how do you instill the user trust is the most important part while you're making that trade off.
Yeah, and data sovereignty is getting quite popular in that aspect. Like, let's say if you are in UK or you launched in London,
Hmm.
so you can guarantee that the data will not leave UK, and it'll
Yes.
be using the whatever the UK data laws. Similarly, in Europe, it will not use your data to, you will not to use the data to train the models.
Hmm.
The user can give the consent. It will not leave Europe. It's going to follow the GDPR and stuff. Now India is also catching on this train. There's the Data Protection Act, which they just recently launched a draft for, um, an Indian sovereign tool. So like your data will not leave India. So what are your thoughts on data sovereignty?
Oh, yes, super important. We actually promote even something even further than that. Amurex is completely self-hostable. So even if you don't trust us, even if you don't want your data to be stored on an external cloud provider, you can self-host it yourself and have the data present on your server, or best case, even your local machine. So super useful. We should respect that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be more critical in the coming future. Private cloud, a lot of demand for private cloud, and nice that you can self-host it yourself. But especially in regulated industries who would be using these kind of tools like healthcare, finances. Actually, RBI, which is the Reserve Bank of India, is now right now it's saying that it's a preference if you want to do private cloud or
Mhm.
data sovereignty, but I think in the future they're going to mandate it. So I'm talking about India. I'm sure like in the US there are different laws. I mean, US is a big country. Every state has its own laws. But this is where the world is headed, like to more, I think, questions being raised about data, about privacy, and I think I don't know. I think it's interesting. But speaking of that, if we talk about the AI landscape in general, it's rapidly evolving. Like new architectures like transformers, like Mamba, which is a new type of state space model, techniques like transfer learning are emerging all the time. So how do you stay ahead of the curve? And like this year or next year, like any emerging trends that excite you or well concern you?
Uh, so for us, thankfully, we are on the application layer. So we can be, whenever a trend gets popular, we can be the people who adopt it. But what I'm really excited by at this point is MCPs. And I think just being very involved, I'm very, very bearish. Uh, I'm very, very bullish on MCPs. Uh, and being ahead on that will give any company a massive advantage, because at least for us, we really rely on integrations, and consuming the data from MCPs, getting us more context, will make us more personalized. MCPs are something that makes me super excited, and long-term memories. So we see that now models have like a larger window, larger context window, but I still believe that memory is still a massive problem in LLMs, and whoever fixes that will create a big change in how the applications are made in the future. So two things I'm really excited by is long-term memory and MCPs.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know what MCPs are, do you want to give a simple explanation? It's getting super popular these days. Everyone's talking about it, and there was a big, like some of the podcasts I saw and YouTube videos just gaining millions of views. So everyone's trying to jump on it. So do you want to give a quick explanation to people who might not be familiar?
Yeah, sure. So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, which is basically a standard that Anthropic is trying to make. Imagine it being like HTTP for AI. It's still in early days, so it has some flaws like security. But what essentially MCP is when agents or tool calling was introduced, how an agent is structured fundamentally is LLMs calling a function, which in turn calls a service. And at scale, that became a big problem because they were calling multiple services, and multiple services have different APIs. So Anthropic created the standard that that told these service providers to expose an MCP. So instead of the function calling having to call a particular service, you could call an MCP, which will be a fixed standard. So that makes things easier to be adopted at scale. So MCP is just a standard, but now that MCP has been introduced, many companies will be exposing their context through a server that can be consumed easily.
Yeah, and that's interesting because like many AI models struggle with contextual understanding. So how do you currently handle it in your AI system, and any techniques you use to capture or incorporate the contextual information in your model's decision making process?
We do it the hard way right now. We call the services manually. We create integrations manually. That's why I'm so excited of the future, because it will save a lot of hard work from us and make our lives slightly easier.
Yep, that makes sense. I have a different sort of question. Like when you're starting a company, you have this trade-off between this might not be the right word, but like code quality or efficiency or whatnot, and just getting the thing out, for the launch. And obviously, when you're in a bigger organization, let's say you have 1,000 employees, everyone has like a structure. There's a proper release cycle and whatnot. And right now, it's just you two. So, or maybe there's like someone else. But do you see that like as a change from when you were pushing code at Bloomberg to what you're doing right now? And is that a do you find that to be like a positive or a negative impact?
It is very different because in Bloomberg there were multiple levels of testing, at least on the consumer applications that I worked at Bloomberg. That would be, we would have a release cycle, then we would get it into staging, then after staging we would have at least one one proper test before production, and then a QA before we actually land it into production. Whereas at the personal AI company, we ship multiple times a day, mostly direct to production. We do certain internal tests. The beauty about that is we learn so fast. Like, by shipping numerous times a day, we understand the user behavior faster than what I had done at Bloomberg. And I think the only way to understand the user behavior is by shipping a lot of code, seeing how they react, and then unshipping it, changing it. Because at the early stage, are trying to, you still are forming your understanding around the users. So you need to do as many things as you can. I think there's a very famous advice for early stage startups is, but you can only be alive by taking action, and take any action that you can. But there's a con, which is sometimes we ship bugs in the production. And sometimes you only find that at 3 a.m. when you're sleeping and something crashes and you wake up and you're half asleep and trying to debug the code. So there's pros and cons to both of them. But for now, I think early stage startups should prioritize user learning. Once you have the user understanding, I think then you can enforce the best practices.
Cool. Yeah, no, I do agree. Would you say it's like a hackathon vibe?
Always. There's there's 6 days of hackathons, at least 7 days of hackathons per week at the personal AI company.
Yeah, that sums it up. But yeah, no, thanks for sharing, Sanskar. Really appreciate it. And since we're talking about AI, we have to talk about data and data quality, which is a major pain point for many AI companies. Like, garbage in, garbage out is still a reality, especially when you're dealing with issues like data drift, where the distribution of data changes over time. There's concept drift as well, where the underlying concept of the relationship changes. So how do you ensure that your training data is diverse and representative, and what do you do when it starts to, let's say, drift over time?
So we have a different perspective on viewing data. We view meaning. That is, we decide what can we do with the data that we have, and where we can use it for personalization. So for us, it is meetings, the knowledge that you've captured already, your emails, your second brain, and we work backwards from that, instead of first getting any data that's possible and then seeing if it's garbage or validating it. So we see what we can do with that. So that's why we have certain flows in your systems, uh, in your second brain meetings and emails, and then we work backwards from it. So that's how we do it. We don't care about data, we care about meaning, and we verify what we can do with that data, how we can extract proper meaning from that, and then only extract the certain data that's needed. So what's the least amount of data that we can use to make the most personalized experience is the strategy we are using right now. Maybe we'll face a problem at scale, but right now it's been working quite well for us.
You mentioned about the personalization. Do you use like attention mechanisms, which are an important component for many AI architectures? So how do you implement that in your current setup? Do you see any like benefits or challenges? Like for example, using these mechanisms to focus on relevant information.
No, we don't have to worry too much about it. That's mostly a foundational model problem. So the model companies and the research labs will be doing that for us. How we personalize it is we have something called the brain, and we use some retrieval techniques, some fine tuning, and we have this memory layer that keeps building around you. And that's why I was so excited about long-term memory is the more you use it, the more we feed into the memory. But at the foundational model level or the attention spans, we don't have to worry too much about that. That will be taken care of by the model companies. So uh, the model gets better and the personal AI company gets better with that regard.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And is that how you're doing like continual learning in AI? Like how do you balance the need for adaptability with the risk of, let's say, catastrophic forgetting or concept drift?
So yes, sometimes our systems still forget. We are still trying to find ways around that. But for now, we are just using memory, our internal long-term memory system, to be able to fix that.
Cool. I'm loving this discussion, and you may have a long-term plan, right? A roadmap. Let's say in an ideal world, let's say if in a hypothetically today you had 1,000-person team,
Mhm.
right? You had 1,000 engineers working for you. How would things change in the way that what you're doing right now? What would you prioritize, and what would you ship more?
If we would have 1,000-person team, I would imagine we'd be way ahead in the curve uh, from what we are right now. I would imagine we would have achieved at least the first roadmap of the AI executive assistant that we are going after. Is that we would be present in your web, we would be present in your desktop, and probably also mobile. We I really care about is the integration and the unified ecosystem that we'll be bringing about. So Amurex should be present into various aspects of your life. So assuming we have 1,000-person team, we'd be focusing more on how we can help you on a day-to-day part when you're not using your knowledge work, or if you're using it from mobile, or if you're on the move. How can we give you suggestions that you didn't ask for, but we know that you needed that. So, for example, we can suggest you to take a break. You probably don't want to do that, but we know by some factual understanding that if you do it right now, your productivity will increase by 100%. Or maybe it was something, an information that you don't remember. You don't even remember what to ask about. And we have deducted somehow that you need it, and we give you suggestions on that. So we have like 5 levels of delegations in our product philosophy, where if you were to hire an AI executive assistant, the stage one will be you will tell them exactly what to do and they would come back. Stage two would be they're slightly smarter and they can organize certain things on your behalf. And stage five will be complete autonomous trust. So we'll be probably near stage five at that regard. So you'll be able to automate a lot of work at that point. So you could when we have 1,000-person team, you'll be telling your friends, today I only worked 6 hours, got paid for 8 hours, and the 6 hours were the best 6 hours for my life, thanks to the personal AI company.
Cool. I like the sound of that. And speaking of stage five, how do you think? I have to ask this question for the people who are listening. Like, how do you go about earning trust as a new AI product, especially when people are getting more like privacy conscious?
The beauty about Amurex is we are building it for us first, and we would never use something that's proprietary or something that doesn't reveal what they're doing with the data. Being open source helps a lot. And in addition to that, we are in the process of getting more certifications, showing that we will be having multiple layers of compliance. So yeah, being open source helps a lot in that regard. Allowing self-hostability, being adding more transparency is how we get user trust.
Cool. And shifting from the tech side, what's something you've learned about yourself while building this company, especially at your age? We're the same age, like I think 25, 26. So what have you learned about yourself?
Firstly, is uh, I when I was in London, people were prioritizing too much about taking a break. Turns out humans are not made of glass. You can push yourself more than you would have thought you could push yourself. We have been working 7 days for the past 2 months, no breaks, and still we wake up every morning. I wake up every morning, very excited to work on what we are doing right now. Also, the fact that I really like some other aspects. I usually thought of myself to be a very technical engineering person, but I really like the scaling part of it. I like the growth. I like understanding the human psychology on how the new feature is perceived, which was something that I didn't know that I would like, but turns out I really like it in running a new startup.
Yeah, this brings us back to the previous point. Like, in the when you're starting a new company, you love that thrill, you want to work on it. It's like your child. That's what I've heard many people say, which is an interesting take. Um, but let's say you fast forward to 5 years. The startup has made it big. What does success look and feel like to you?
For me, success would be Amurex is empowering billions of people. That's it. The personal AI company has impacted billions of people, and people we have saved at least 2 hours per day in your professional and personal lives. So you have 2 hours more to spend with your family. That is what success looks to me.
Amazing. Well, thanks for sharing, Sanskar. And um, so Amurex is a project under the personal AI company. So why this differentiation? Like, do you plan to have more projects under the company? And my last question is for people who want to check it out, get involved, where can they go?
So eventually, yes, but that's a trade secret right now. We are only focusing on Amurex for now, but in the future, you might see more things from us. So if you want to check it out, go to amurex.ai, and we are open source. If you want to talk with us, join our Discord. We'll be happy to chat to you.
Amazing. Well, thanks for joining, Sanskar. Really interesting conversation. Looking forward to what you build. And um, yeah, very,
Thank you,
very excited.
Kunal. Thank you for hosting, Kunal. I look forward to seeing you all. Bye bye.